Hey, this is Nat Mundel. I'm the founder of Voyage, and I'm super excited to introduce our listeners today to Malik Yoba, who plays Reggie in our contemporary noir, very cool scripted podcast series called Red Meat Village. You probably know Malik from his performances in Cool Runnings, New York Undercover, and more recently, The Last OG, among many other credits over 30, 40-year acting career. So Malik, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here, man. Nice golf course background.
Well, the podcast listeners are going to have to imagine that. So yes, there is a golf course behind me. And as I disclosed to Malik, somewhat embarrassingly, I am not a golfer. Well, Malik and I were just getting acquainted, and we learned, Malik, that you've got a passion and an interest in voiceover work. Was this your first scripted podcast series? And are you a big listener of podcasts?
I do listen. Yeah, I listen to like Sam Harris and Krista Tippett. I'm a lot like really cerebral when it comes to podcasts. I listen to a lot of like educational podcasts, like spiritual or personal development. On writing, I listen to Drink Champs. That's not, that's hip hop. But this is the first scripted one that I've done. So I've done an audio book at this point, 2 audio books, some other voiceover work for brands, but not enough cartoons and characters and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, right on. We're so thrilled you accepted the role of this character, Reggie, who, he's kind of a Renaissance man. He's a champion boxer and this part-time private detective. It's an interesting combo. He's really well.
Like my character in Arrested Development.
What's that?
It's like my character in Arrested Development. He was a party planner and a private eye.
Yeah. So, what were your reactions when you first read the script and about the character? Like, what attracted you to it?
Well, number one, my agent Sherry, every time she calls with any opportunity to do voice work, I'm always saying cool. And then she said, hey, it's really cool. I have some other clients that are doing it. To be honest with you, I didn't really read it before. I got to be, and then I read it when I did it with Dan. But once I did it, I just thought it was cool. Like I skimmed it. She told me what it was. I had no idea. So for me, it was sort of like, let me just jump into this thing called Red Meat Village.
Yeah.
And see what it is. So it's kind of fun to discover along the way that it's set in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like the character is, it was a lot of fun, man. I called her up right away and said, I want to do one of these once a week.
And even though it's rooted in noir, even though it's contemporary story, it's rooted in noir. Have you done noir before, and how has it played into your performance?
No, I haven't. I mean, I did grow up listening to The Shadow. Is that noir? That should have been noir. That was from like the 50s, whenever that originally started.
I think basically anything that came out of the 50s that had to do with crime and stuff was noir by nature.
Right. Yeah.
So was that cool for you to jump into that?
Yeah. It's funny because I'm a writer as well, and I, in some ways, you guys after my own heart, because I was touring with shows in the Black community. Like, so Tyler Perry's whole career was based on those touring plays that like most mainstream media and Hollywood wasn't aware of, but It's very, very lucrative and very popular. So I was doing those for like 10, almost 15 years between movies and TV. But I had this idea to sort of start a play on radio as episode, and then in order to see what happens, you had to come to the theater to see the rest of it, kind of thing. So this kind of reminds me of that. You can sort of create these worlds that people can enter into, get emotionally invested into. And in this case, right, they can become film, or they can become a live action, a theater production or whatever. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're sorry, say that again?
No, I was just gonna say you're tapping into my interest, that's all.
That's cool. Yeah, we one of the primary reasons we built out this podcast unit was to do just that. We've got a lot of film and television projects. And in some cases, these podcasts that we're doing, like, they strategically align for sure, because as you know, it's like the hot new way that Hollywood is discovering IP. But but in some cases we're doing like these prequel, sort of side story things that introduce a character, and then our television show that we're also out pitching just expands on that universe, right? So yeah, we think that's a really cool model. All right, so you were of course in New York Undercover, and you've done work in the crime space for quite a while. Where do you think Reggie and Tony fit into that history of PI, private investigator duos? Like, what makes them unique? What do they call? What are they similar to?
Well, I mean, I think one is set in Brooklyn. It does tap into a little bit of my New York Undercover origins. At this point, this would be number 19.
Wow.
Law enforcement. I just did a film for Netflix called A Good Nurse, where I was police captain, sheriff actually. So that was 18. This is 19. Some law enforcement related character, but I always liked the buddy cop kind of genre, right? How they are each other's foil kind of thing, even as they go after crime, the banter between them, the shit talking in this case, this like sort of bet they have around this essay contest that ultimately wins. I like it. It's smart.
Yeah. Well, you clearly have this, sort of well-regarded history of dramatic performances in a lot of your work, but a lot of people, may not know your comedy work as especially as recently, but you've really pulled together some incredible comedic performances in Cool Runnings and Arrested Development, and so these two characters, and they're also in that origin of noir. There's some banter there, and were you able to draw on some of that comedy past?
Yeah, as long as Dan, your producer, was laughing, even though like I had half of the script on one side of the screen, the other half I could see him, so yeah, I kind of see him in my periphery, and whenever his head, he just that kind of audience of one. So I think I nailed it, but
awesome.
Yeah, what I want to do more of, for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So, on that note, what's next for you? What are you working on? What do you want your fans to know about what's coming up?
Well, that Good Nurse film. I'm actually sitting here editing between this interview. I'll go back to a doc series I created called The Real Estate Mixtape, which is actually a docu-series on my journey in real estate development, which is another thing I do.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So I'm finding the storytelling aspects of all these different businesses I'm in. So whether it's real estate, I've gotten into the cannabis space, whether it's scripted 1 hours, comedies, half hours. I'm just being really, really productive, especially over the last couple of years that the world has kind of slowed down.
You're officially a Zoolander slashy. You know the movie Zoolander?
Right.
Remember the Slashy Awards? It was like actor slash
right.
actor slash real estate agent.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, you're building the platform. Look, if you're only an actor, you're always waiting on a job.
Oh yeah.
You have a good time.
Well, good for you. You've made a career where you're not waiting too long. Over that period, such an extraordinary career you've had so far. But yeah, I mean, I'm a slashy. I'm a producer slash golfer, right? We just learned that. Although I'm not I'm a producer slash live on a golf course golfer, but don't golf slashy.
Yeah, just find as many ways to be creative and tell the kind of stories I want to tell. I've really gotten a lot deeper into writing and directing, and being a storyteller and holding a whole vision. So totally. That's it's just one of those things. Like when I decided to leave my career as a youth worker, that was my job, running a group called the City Kids Foundation. Beautiful. Like 6 years before I did Cool Runnings. It was a moment where I had to decide. After I did Cool Runnings, I went back to the organization. We had a Saturday morning show with the Muppets I was writing music for. And I decided I was only going to make money off my art. And along the way, I've always had different entrepreneurial interests, restaurants, and a marketing company, music, tech. But now it's just really a lot of development that the world will see eventually when I unleash it onto the world. But
that's awesome, man. Well, one of our we have these 4 fundamental core values that sort of underplay everything we do at the company, and one of them is be creative. And I think that's sort of the obvious one for Voyage, which is like we're in a creative industry, but I think creativity is so much more than just the production of art, for example. It's, there's creative problem solving, there's innovation as creativity. So, I'm a big believer in everyone finding a way to constantly creatively express. And so like I'm a musician, so I try to, creatively express that way. I creatively express in a lot of my business pursuits and try to do things differently and stuff. But it's always wonderful to hear about another soul out there that just can't help themselves but produce creative work.
Well, I just wrote a song for you for Red Meat Village, Red Meat Village. That was like a little improv, and Dan was like, "We got to use that." So I won't even take the copyright on that. You guys, I am an ASCAP writer since '91, so I'm a musician as well. I get it. No, and it's funny because I think that, especially for listeners, any creatives out there, especially young people, like if I would have known that business was creative, if it was presented as creativity, then it would have been a different journey for me as a kid. I'm glad I always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And like at the point, you can't help but not be creative if you're a creative being. And I think the misnomer of our entertainment industry is a lot of times people aren't creative and they're not visionary. And you see things, particularly if you're just an actor. Right? I've been on shows where I've come up with complete marketing campaigns for the show. And before we even shot a pilot, just based on what I saw in the script, I understood all the touch points and strategy you could build around the storyline and the characters you presented to the execs. And it can make people uncomfortable because in some cases they want you to be in your position, but
right.
You're a boss. I'm a boss. When I sign the front of the check, I understand that position. When I sign the back of the check, I understand that position. And sometimes folks, don't want you to do those things if you're just, in their eye, just the actor. But
exactly.
To your point, I can't help myself.
Yeah, exactly. And the industry is, as you've, indicated to our listeners, loves to pigeonhole, right? And then loves hierarchy and loves power dynamics. It's longstanding tradition. I mean, and we endeavor to sort of be the antithesis of that. And I strive as the owner and CEO of the company to keep the company as flat as possible, right? Where great ideas come from anywhere.
No hierarchy.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. And so everyone is involved at the company in our strategic planning, and everybody, we try to prevent siloization as much as possible. And of course, that's a challenge when you're also very operational and trying to execute on very specific deliverables. Like, you need people to still do their jobs, right? Like the Caddyshack line, the world needs ditch diggers too, right? But we try to bring the ditch digger into all of the creative conversations,
What motive, can I ask you a little bit of your journey, because that's, as you know, you're a bit of a unicorn in that respect, to lead a creative business, and as you define as flat, to allow for creativity to come from anywhere. What motivated that for you?
It's multifaceted. Number one, the smart part of me wants to answer that with, we think there's a better way of doing things, or at least a different way, and that different, friendly, open source approach creates a context in which better creativity can emerge, right? That's the smart answer. And then the other answer, which is a little bit of a window into me, like I have a little bit of a middle finger to, closed circuits, right? And to, sort of old boys clubs. And that goes frankly, long standing back to when, I was in high school. I was never unpopular, but I was like always one step removed from the popular group, like the big sort of crowd that was like the epicenter of everything. And I never liked that. I always was really a big fan of inclusion and accessibility. And so when I see, an industry that has for so long been about exclusion and non-accessibility, I have a little bit of an attitude problem with that. And that attitude problem, coupled together with the belief that, there ought to be a different way of doing things just drives me, you know?
Do you know what you're doing right now? Just a loaded question. You are affirming what I preach every single day. The reason why I created the real estate mixtape is because I'm both in the real estate development business, I'm in the film business, and I was doing the show God Friended Me, and I was playing a real estate developer. And I live here in Brooklyn, and I thought about the amount of productions in this neighborhood. God Friended Me shot 2 minutes down the block. There's a film studio, Steiner Studios for me. And I thought about how many people walk by film sets all day long, especially in this neighborhood, and construction sites, and have no idea how to get in either business. And I'm in both. And I love working with young people. And so I decided to film my journey, pursuing my first development deal in the city. I took 7 young people that I randomly selected from around the city and took them on a journey over 6 weeks across the state of New York to give them access to the process.
Wow.
And so now what we created is a lane for content and a lane for real estate deals.
Wow.
And inclusion, right?
Yeah.
And so recently we screened the first 2 episodes in a location, a abandoned rail station that's being renovated by a woman, young Black woman in the Bronx, who's under-resourced and under-networked, but has this property. And we did a equity crowdfunding opportunity while screening the first 2 episodes, and she's in it, and so is that location.
Wow.
So it's a full circle way of using art, creativity, content, community organizing, economic development, all in one. So when you say what you're saying, I appreciate that, because I have a bit of a middle finger up too, and I've been in the game, 30 years. I've spent the last few days, doing press for Cool Runnings, because the Jamaican bobsled team is now back in the
Back
Olympics.
at it, right?
I got a call today from the guy that cast me in my very first film in 1989, a guy named Reggie to ask me if I wanted to go
Wow.
Shakespeare with him up in the Berkshires this summer. And it's interesting because I feel like everything's kind of coming full circle for me, especially like in this week. And so to hear you say what you said, that speaks to me. And as an entrepreneur, I'm going to offer you something. I would love to help you build your business. I'm connected to a lot of creatives, particularly folks that look like me. So what I sent you is a Jamaican story, and there are Jamaicans that look like you that people don't know about. Most people think that most Jamaicans look like me,
right?
But who's Jamaican intentionally made a diverse Jamaican cast, and like I said, he did it 20 years ago, but I read it yesterday or 2 days ago, and I was like, bro, we have to mount this. And so please take a listen to that or read it. Send it to, and see if that piques your interest. But perhaps we could collaborate, and I could be that other arm here in New York that can help feed you some opportunities that we could build together.
I love it, man. And I'm a yes to that for sure. And I think Dan has your email, so we won't have it published here. But
this is important. This is important. I think for listeners, like, I move different. Like when I did the movie, Why Did I Get Married? As a for instance, and this is for the creatives that are listening. I don't know if you see that movie with Tyler Perry. I played Janet Jackson's husband in that film, and there's a scene right before my character is about to get killed, and The Rock actually comes in as her new lover. That's another story. But we're filming the scene, and Holding was in an advertising agency. I didn't realize it was an agency at the time. So I'm standing in the building as we're waiting to shoot, and I said, so what is this place? And someone said, it's an ad agency. I said, well, there's checks in here, and I'm going to get them. When Tyler's ready, call me. And I start snooping around the office. There's a meeting going on where the agency is pitching a brand to be the agency of record. I happen to know a little something about that business. They invited me to sit down. I contributed to the meeting.
Oh, wow.
And it turned into years of doing business with that company.
Wow.
With creating content for a bunch of brands. And so for particularly people who think in one way and they're only actors, I think that it's okay to be a little disruptive sometimes, even when you're on a set filming another movie.
Yeah, there's a balance there, of course. But yeah, I mean, a couple of stories come to mind. These are funny stories. I don't think I've ever told them publicly, but One was actually, I was thinking about this one story, but this is a better one. This is the more pivotal one. So I came to the entertainment business a little older. I had already had a different career, so I was approaching 30 years old when I really, I'd sort of come up through the camera department a little bit for a couple of years, but then I was like, I need to move over to the producing side. And so I moved to LA. I got a job as an assistant at a production company. So I was like a 30-year-old assistant, right? And my second week on the job, I was stepping, fetching it, whatever I was getting, I don't know. I was walking down the hall, and this was a TV commercial production company, largely branded entertainment and TV commercials. And so they rep directors. And I was walking by this director's office, this big, like really, heyday, big time TV commercial director. And his door was wide open and he goes, "I need a screenwriter." He was really frustrated. And I took like 4 more steps past the office and I was like, should I or shouldn't I? And I said, certainly I should. So I ambled into his office and I said, "Hey, Tom, I can write." And he's like, "Okay, then write this." And I wrote his pitch for him. And he won that gig, right? And, a production gig. And that gave birth really to, that moment of being willing to stick my neck out gave birth to me getting into business for myself, right? And then the other story, which came later. So now I'm about 5 years into running the original Voyage. And the original Voyage was a creative services secret weapon. Like companies like Jerry Bruckheimer would hire us to help them develop their TV show pitches and then put together these really great pitch decks for them and stuff. About 5 years into building that, I got a call from this restaurant consultant who had been hired by an ad agency to find the restaurant's new agency. And I had a conversation with him and I'm like, "Well, we're not really an agency." And he's like, "Well, it was this really wonderful old man named Ray Cohen." And Ray Cohen goes, "Well, just, meet me down at the restaurant tomorrow." Right. And I'm like, "Okay, what's the address?" And so I meet him down there. Never been to it. It's this chain called Islands Restaurants. There's like 60 of them, right? It's a legit chain. And I walked in there and I basically, I didn't know, much about anything. And I just laid it out. I said, "This place I think is a bit of a disaster in today's world. Like it needs a complete, do-over and rebranding and rethinking of everything." And so I didn't have anything to lose because I wasn't in the ad agency business anyway. So he said, "Okay." He's like, "All right, Nat. Well, I'm bidding these other 2 big agencies and I'm looking for a small upstart, and I'd like to include you." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I really appreciate that, but we're not an agency." And he's like, "Okay, so tomorrow call me and let me know that you're in." And I'm like, "But we're not an agency." He's like, "Tomorrow call me." And that's when I got the window. I was like, "Oh, this is a guy who's trying to throw me a bone."
Right.
And so what I did is I sorry to be so long-winded with this, but
no, it's a great fucking story, bro.
So I go, who do I know in the agency world? And I had met this guy in New York at a wedding. And I remember he worked at an ad agency. And so I call him up and I said, "Hey, remember me?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What are you up to?" He's like, "Well, we left Chris and I, my creative director partner, we left the agency. We started our little, shop here in New York." And I was like, "You want to go in on an agency of record deal?" And so we did a deal over the phone, like just handshake, right? And it comes to my attention that these 2 creative directors, so this is Islands, for everyone if you don't know what that is, it's a burger chain, right? It's a casual dining burger restaurant, 60 stores. It comes to light that Chris and Greg, their nicknames at the agency were Burgers and Fries, because they ran Burger King, they ran Wendy's, right? They ran all the big fast food chains as creative directors. And so, fast forward a month and a half later, we won the account and all of a sudden we were an agency. And so when opportunity calls, like you got to pay attention to it. You got to be open and innovative. And yeah, that, it was a little blip on the Voyage radar because, frankly, the recession hit the next year and the agency went under. But yeah,
But
man.
I think more to the point is you listen to that voice that said, no, don't take a fifth step.
That's
Go
right.
back.
Yeah.
And know that you're deserving. As we're talking, it hit me. Yes, I talked to Dan and said, hey, Dan, I have this script. But hearing your story as a fellow entrepreneur, I'm like, in my spirit, I was like, I need to tell this man, we can build your business. We can help you do that. I know a lot of folks. And, it's a space I'm in. So if you're open.
That's a very sweet and clearly genuine offer. And I'll follow up with you on that. And yeah, I mean, if you could imagine what, there's the business we're building and there's what the business does, but the underpinning of what we're actually up to is like, we're trying to create this, like, imagine this like heart-centered, like lighthouse out there in the dark, flashing its lights, saying like, hey, it's okay. We're here. We can do this. We're, come, it's safe here. It's nurturing, right? And to be that beacon of what's possible. And that's really the game we love to play. So it seems like that's embedded in your soul, long-standing.
Brother, listen, man, I'm going to be really transparent. I had quadruple bypass heart surgery in August.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're so glad you're here, man.
Yeah. I did not realize that I had blocked arteries. With a fit lifestyle and, good health and eating and working out, but it's a genetic predisposition, a gift from the ancestors. And so, it's true. And it's a real existential time for me. And, I'm resisting the status quo right now. And that I'm expected. Oh, just get another series. I've been the series lead in 14 series. And whether it's been 6 episodes, a pilot, 10 episodes, 20 shows get canceled, I don't own any of that IP. And so I'm at a place in my life where I'm a boss. I can't, and I'm still getting, hey, can you come read for this, recurring on a CW show?
Right.
That's the reality, folks. If you're an actor, like look up the credits on IMDb, how much I've done since 1993. 30 years in this business, and it's still, can you sing for your supper?
Right.
I do get a fair amount of offers, but it's still contingent on someone else saying yes. And I like you, there's so many creatives out here, right? This guy David Herron who wrote this play. I have a friend in Jamaica that sent me the play 6 months ago. I was only able to get to it 2 days ago, and I finally read it. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking hilarious. This is genius. It's hitting all the emotions for me. I couldn't wait to finish reading it. I'm on page 35. It was a 100-page play. And I had to call him just to let him know, just to give him that little shot in his arm to say, hey, bro, you have some fire here. I can't wait to finish. And he immediately called the friends in Jamaica. And so for him, to have Malik Yoba co-sign his work, which he didn't need my approval. He's already had success with it, but he's been trying to get to the next level. And there's a good people like that I know. I have as much satisfaction. You're a musician, I'm a musician. I know what it's like to transcend when you're performing and that what that feels like. You get to the same place performing as an actor. There are these transcendent moments you can have when you give yourself over to the spirit of creativity and arrive at these places that people go, oh my fucking God, what was that? I don't know what it was.
Yeah, flow state.
I get the same pleasure from watching a David have his success with his play or any other creatives that I know that are out there. So I really love what you're doing. I could feel your energy and your sincerity. I felt it with Dan as well. And, like I said, you guys have my contact and I'd love to play.
Yeah, awesome. Can't wait. Well, you guys heard it here. This was a conversation that started one way and ended another. And isn't that in some respects just the wonderful way life goes? So here we are. You can find Red Meat Village. Remember, that's the show we were talking about. Yeah, you heard it here. The soundtrack. You heard a sneak peek to the soundtrack here.
Village. You know, I wrote the theme song for Cool Runnings too, by the way.
Did you really?
Up people say, no, they can't believe Jamaica. We have a bobsled team. We have the one Reese and the one Junior, Yul Brenner and the man Sanka, the fastest of the older Jamaican sprinter. Go to Olympic 5K Jamaica. I wrote that for my audition. And so,
oh my God.
Open call, and they said, you're a track star, you run a race, celebrate. And every Jamaican has a song in their heart, so I pulled it out. It ended up in the movie.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I can't wait for Red Meat Village to come out. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in with us. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And huge shout out and big gratitude to Malik Yoba for joining us today. Thank you so much, Malik, for your time and generosity of spirit.
Yep.
And this is Nat Mundel signing off.